We now know who the candidates are who are officially running to become the new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. They are Pierre Poilievre, Jean Charest, Leslyn Lewis, Patrick Brown, Scott Aitchison, and Roman Baber. Now, they've all submitted the full $300,000 registration fee, a compliance deposit, along with signatures from 500 party members. The Tories are picking their new leader on September the 10th. Now, there were some candidates, however, who were not allowed to run. To discuss this in more detail is political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley. Now, Brian, which candidates are we talking about whom the Tories shot down?
Well, there's some that just didn't make it. Leona Aslev, who, served in the military, was first elected as a Liberal MP, then crossed the floor to join the Conservatives. She served under Andrew Scheer as a deputy leader for a time. She didn't make it because she didn't meet the fundraising target. Mark Dalton, British Columbia MP. He didn't make it because of the fundraising target. And that's the case for most of them. But there's a couple who said, look, we made the fundraising targets and we have enough signatures. There's something else going on here. So one of them is Joel Etienne, who's originally from New Brunswick. He lives in Toronto now. He's Black, Jewish, and pro-life. So there's an interesting combo for you that would break a lot of assumptions that people have. Etienne says he raised enough money, he deposited them. He's claiming that he was not allowed to take part, not because of his pro-life views. Of course, Leslyn Lewis is very much a social conservative, very much pro-life, but because of his views on Falun Gong, which I find difficult to believe given the positions that the Conservative Party has taken under successive leaders on the issue of China, on the issue of Falun Gong, and standing up for religious liberty. So we're going to have to find out more on that front. There's also Joseph Bourgault, who I'm not sure how to describe Joseph Bourgault. I think he would describe himself as pro-life, but he's also pro-freedom convoy. Unfortunately, he's also pro-conspiracy theorist. And this is someone who says he got all the signatures and got all of the money in time. I haven't heard why the party is saying no to him, but I can suspect. I mean, he is out there on video claiming that Pierre Poilievre is corrupt, like all politicians who are career politicians, that he and his wife have been on the take from the World Economic Forum. He's doing videos with Theo Fleury claiming this, saying that Pierre Poilievre is worth $9 million. I've known Pierre since he was first elected. We're not friends. We don't hang out socially, but we know each other and we know each other well. I'd find that hard to believe, the claims that they're making. So Bourgault I'm not sure, based on what he's saying, I'm not sure why he wants to run to be leader of the Conservative Party. He seems to want to be a non-establishment party leader, perhaps, but there are reasons that some of these candidates are being told no.
So Bourgault is Bourgon, basically is what you're telling me.
You could say that, yes.
Now, Brian, when it comes to who's actually leading the pack, Pierre Poilievre is the front runner over Jean Charest, but it's not a really big lead. Does that surprise you?
It does. So over the first 3 months of the year, now Pierre Poilievre only started taking donations officially registered on March 22nd. Jean Charest was just a couple days earlier. Now, you'll remember that Pierre Poilievre launched his campaign in February, but wasn't officially taking donations. He edged him out. He got about, I think it's about $550,000 in donations to $490,000. So about $55,000 difference between the two of them. If you'd looked at the hype, you would have expected Pierre Poilievre to be far out ahead. Now, I'm told that the gap continued to widen through early April, but I'm also told that it's still competitive. You look at others, Leslyn Lewis, Patrick Brown, Scott Aitchison, Roman Baber, they are much further behind. When it comes to fundraising, the two powerhouses continue to be Pierre Poilievre and Jean Charest. Brown and Aitchison, by the way, they are attracting people who are giving close to the max, which is about $1,600, not at the max, but close to it. Pierre Poilievre is getting people who are giving about $200. Charest, you would have thought, based on all the slags against him, well, he's just attracting the rich bankers and they're giving the max. No, he's in the middle. So we'll have to see. These are the quarterly fundraising numbers. They end on March 31st. We'll see what happens for April, May, and June. You've got to be a member by June 3rd if you want to join or if you want to vote. And Hal, I'm told thousands of memberships a day being sent in by all the campaigns, not 1,000, not 2,000, thousands of memberships a day signing up to join the Conservative Party from all the camps.
Now, there have been some policy battles of late, Brian. Pierre Poilievre is fighting the Bank of Canada. Jean Charest says he plans to export Canadian energy. And Patrick Brown getting himself in a little bit of trouble over comparing Ukrainians to Palestinians.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. And look, Patrick Brown is definitely trying to reach out to different immigrant communities, different ethnic communities, religious communities that he says haven't been properly represented by the Conservative Party in the past and that should be on the Conservative side. But in an interview with an organization that some say is far too close to Hezbollah, Patrick Brown was comparing Palestinians and Ukrainians. Now, look, they're both fighting for homelands, they're both fighting for survival. It's going to get him into trouble with some groups, and definitely with pro Israel groups, with Jewish groups, with Christian Zionists. This is something that's going to get Patrick Brown in trouble, much like his call to stop calling the Tamil Tigers a terrorist group. Brown's recruiting people that haven't traditionally been there and making promises that haven't traditionally been part of the Conservative Party. It could work for him. It could end up hurting him. We'll have to see. Jean Charest, he actually got people from the oil patch coming on board saying this guy has the plan that works to get Canadian oil and gas exported, including someone who just retired as CEO of a major oil and gas company in Calgary. So, he's trying to show that, he'd repeal Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines bill, Bill C-48, the one that blocks the Canadian ships, but not American, from going off the BC North Coast. So he's trying to go against type there. The one that puzzles me is Pierre Poilievre. I get him fighting inflation, and because that's on everybody's mind right now. Go to the grocery store, go for a cup of coffee, go for anything. We all know inflation. Fighting the Bank of Canada is kind of a niche thing, and I'm not sure how many votes he's going to get from that. But he's out big on cryptocurrency. He's fighting the Bank of Canada. Maybe he's mining a vein of gold that the rest of us just don't see yet. But that was one of his big policies of late.
Now, last week we chatted about the Trudeau government's inquiry into the Emergencies Act, and you raised concerns about whether it would be used to cover things up. Since there's been a lot of talk about another potential cover-up as well, the Winnipeg lab and the firing of 2 top scientists from there, what happened?
So this is a story that's been going on for years. A top scientist and a researcher at the Winnipeg lab, which is their only level 4 lab. It deals with severe infectious diseases, pathogens. It's the type of thing that when we first heard about COVID, all the tests had to go to the Winnipeg Biolab to deal with it. Prior to COVID, these two, the scientist and researcher, they were fired. Their security clearance was revoked. This has been an ongoing issue of people saying, why did this happen? And as drip, 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 we found out more little drips and pieces coming out over the years. Well, we found out that this couple was working with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. A lot of questions about that when it comes to COVID-19, that they work closely with a general in the People's Liberation Army of China, which is the official military arm of the Communist Party of China. A lot of questions about what was happening. And the government has refused to answer. They refused to answer at committee. They refused to answer when Parliament voted. The clerk of the Privy Council was found in contempt, if you remember, before the last election. And there was a push to have this continue to be looked at. Well, the Liberals and their coalition partners, the NDP, have come up with a deal that excludes the Bloc and the Conservatives and says, we'll look into this and tell you if there's anything that you need to know. This is completely unacceptable. How we've got people who were at our highest level of dealing with infectious diseases with top level security clearance, working with the Chinese military and Chinese scientists on issues that are of great concern to Canadians. And the Trudeau government, which was elected promising openness and transparency, open by default, they're saying, trust us and our new coalition partners.
Brian, a number of farmers across the country have begun their spring seeding, But a lot of them are also worried about their ability to make it work this year, especially right here in southern Alberta, where we've had so much drought the last couple of years. Now, there are other issues producers will be dealing with, including tariffs on imported fertilizer and Ottawa's attempts to reduce fertilizer usage due to climate change.
Yeah, look, it's amazing that we're not self-sufficient in fertilizer, but we've been moving towards a global economy for a long time. And what are two of the other countries beyond Canada that produce fertilizer or the ingredients for them? Well, Russia and Ukraine. They're in the middle of a war. There are a lot of sanctions and tariffs on Russian products. And many farmers, before the war started, had pre-purchased their fertilizer back in the fall. They agreed to a specific price. Now, if you followed fertilizer prices, they've gone up two, three, fourfold. It has been horrifying for people who didn't lock in last fall. I've been speaking to some of them. So some that bought from Russia are now worried that, okay, I got in at a good price, but am I going to face sanctions? Am I going to be paying the tariffs? So that's one side. And the government hasn't been able to give a good answer. The Conservatives have been pushing on this. The Trudeau Liberals have not given sufficient answers that make farmers and farm organizations feel secure in what's going on. On the other issue, there is also concern about what the government's push to reduce fertilizer will do. They want to reduce fertilizer usage as a way to reduce carbon emissions. Well, if you reduce fertilizer usage in Canada, you reduce crop yield. That means at a time when the world is facing the fact that Ukraine is about the same as Canada when it comes to producing wheat. We all rely on wheat, we rely on bread, we rely on it as an ingredient. Ukraine is at about the same level as us in terms of production and exports globally. Russia is ahead of us. And these two countries are either facing sanctions or their fields are being run over by war. And our farmers are worried that they're being told they've got to reduce fertilizer use, which means reduced crop yield, which means reduced income for them. And they're, again, not getting clear answers. So the latest that I can tell you is that people just still don't know, and that leaves them anxious and worried at a time of domestic uncertainty, but also global uncertainty. The Trudeau government needs to get its act together on these two fronts to let farmers know they've got some security, some sense of what's coming as they get into this seeding time.
Absolutely. Brian, Ontario is about to kick off an election. PC leader Doug Ford is seeking re-election after, some would say, a rocky 4 years. What are his chances of being re-elected? Will the Liberals and NDP maybe make some inroads this election campaign?
Well, if they were effective opposition parties, then they might have. Look, campaigns matter. The campaign officially starts on Wednesday, and voting day is June 2nd. That's a very small window, Hal. And, fortunately for Doug Ford, unfortunately for the opposition parties, they've been ineffective. Andrea Horwath has been opposition party or the opposition leader the whole time. She's the head of Ontario's New Democrats. Stephen Del Duca was elected head of the Liberal Party, which was reduced from a powerhouse majority government status to just 7 seats. I dubbed them the minivan party. Maybe you've heard that. They could all carpool together to work. He took over a week before lockdowns went into effect. So he's been at a disadvantage, but he's had ups and downs. His first year was a circus. It was a disaster. Then COVID hit. He went up. Then he handled things badly. He went down. Then he went up. Then he went down. It has been a yo-yo for Ford. But at this point, it looks like he's poised to win another majority government. And much like Justin Trudeau was able to win, 2 secondary elections, he only got minorities, but he was able to do it because the opposition didn't do their job of showing themselves as governments in waiting. That's kind of what Ford's dealing with. But my expectation at this point, subject to change if something happens in the campaign, at this point, it would look like a second majority government for Doug Ford in the Ontario PC party.
Brian, do you think abortion will become a hot-button political issue in Canada once again, with the talk of the U.S. Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade? What are your thoughts?
I think it will be, and I think you're already seeing that. Look, Andrew Horwath, the NDP leader in Ontario, tried to make it a provincial issue. Provincial governments can't ban abortion in Canada. That's not the way our legal system works. We've got the reports that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to overturn Roe versus Wade, which would not get rid of abortion laws, but turn it back to the states. Ours, it's a national issue. And there are not enough pro-life MPs elected to Parliament to change this. Neither do we have a judicial system that is, or judges who are looking to overturn the Morgentaler decision of 1988, which is very different than Roe versus Wade. There's no right, women's right to choose enshrined through jurisprudence in Canada. None of that matters, though, Hal. And it also doesn't matter that Canadians are mixed on this issue. Canadians don't want abortion banned, according to polling, but they also do want some restrictions. But we have none. But this is going to be used by Justin Trudeau and the Liberals to hammer Conservatives and say, see what happened in the United States? If you don't elect us, abortion's going to be banned. We're going back to the 1950s. That's a horrible thing. Don't let them get in power. Of course, this is going to be used, and it's going to be used as a wedge. It's going to be used as a hammer by Trudeau to go after his political opponents. Don't expect nuance like I just described about how many elected MPs there are, what the judicial system's like, or the fact that Canadians do want some restrictions. That will not be part of the conversation. It'll be a black and white morality play played out in the media where everyone in favor of abortion is good. Everyone with even qualms or concerns will be portrayed as bad.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.